Hello there, welcome to Tech and Cash. I hope you are doing well. Today, I want to talk to you about this board game called Earth that I've been playing quite a bit recently. And what I noticed that even during my first game, I see a lot of similarities between this game and Wingspan, just in terms of theme, mechanics, some of the game concept. So I just want to make a video to highlight some of the similarities between both game, maybe also highlight some of the unique aspect of Earth, and at the end maybe also share some of my thoughts on both game and which game I like better. So I don't know, maybe I'll introduce you to some game that you might want to explore or you might like as well if you like Wingspan. So as you can see here, this game came out quite recently. So it came out this year in 2023. Play 1 to 5 players. Complexity wise, I believe based on Board Game Geek ranking right now is slightly above Wingspan, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on this later on. So theme wise, it's the nature theme games. You're trying to build Earth with flora and fauna and terrain. So if you look at the game itself, mechanics, if you look at the mechanics, the main action or objective of the game is each player is going to try to build a tableau, a 4x4 tableau that looks like this. So this is the end of the game. At least for one player, the tableau will be completed in the 4x4 fashion. And it has an engine building component as well. So each card that you play, or each flora card that you play, has different color power that get activated when you activate different actions. So that's that engine building aspect that's very similar to Wingspan. All right, I must say this is not going to be a tutorial, so I'm not going to go into the details of all the rules and mechanics and how to play the game. I'm just mainly highlighting, the similarity between this game and Wingspan. All right, so the first thing, very similar to Wingspan, in Earth you have 4 main actions. So just like Wingspan, you have 4 actions. You play bird, you gain food, you lay eggs, and you draw a card. So in Earth, the first action that you have is plan. So that allows you to play cards onto your tableau. So again, very similar to playing birds onto the tableau. And then the second action here is compost. So you gain soil and also compost card. So soil is like the main currency in this game that you use to pay for card that you want to play. So again, this is very similar to gaining food in Wingspan, but instead of having different type of food in Earth, you only pay soil. And then you also have the third action, which is water. So when you water, you gain sprout. So this cube, and I would say this is similar to laying eggs in Wingspan because when you gain sprout, it has to go to sprout spaces on the flora card that you play. So just like egg spaces on bird, and you can only hold as many sprout as you have the space for. And each sprout is worth 1 point at the end of the game. Again, very similar to Wingspan, and there's also power that allows you to convert some of this sprout to other resources like cards or soil. So again, very similar to Wingspan, where you can exchange resources in between, like between different types. And then the last action that you have is grow. When you activate the yellow or pick the grow action, you get to draw cards, and then you get grove token, I guess. So in this case, this is very similar to gaining card in Wingspan. When you need more cards to play, you can activate yellow to gain more cards. I guess the grove are this, round token that you place on card on this specific space. In terms of similarity to Wingspan, I would say it's kind of like caching food on card. So this growth that you put on card is gonna worth 1 point, at least 1 point at the end of the game each. But sometimes they can worth more. I'm not gonna go into the detail here. So yeah, those are the 4 actions, very similar to Wingspan. So, and which I like as well. Like one thing I like about Wingspan is that you have 4 actions. It's not too complicated. just in terms of like, you're not being presented with like, 10 or 20 different actions that you have to pick from. So that's one thing I like about Wingspan, and that's the same case here. One thing that I kind of mentioned was the compose action, or the compose mechanics. So when you activate the red action, you get the soil that you need to use to play more flora card or some terrain card. But the compose allows you to compose cards from the deck to this pile here. So what happened was that each of the compose card is worth 1 point at the end of the game. So again, if you compare to Wingspan, that would be like tugging cards from the deck. Then that's a separate compose mechanic where you compose card from your hand. For example, this card allows you to compose card from your hand with this symbol. In that case, you will have to have cards in your hand to compose. So again, very similar to Wingspan. When you tug, you can either tug from the deck or you tug from your hand. And I guess I want to point out one thing that's different about the action in Earth is that when the active player pick one of the 4 action, all the other players also get a secondary or a minor action. So usually it's similar action, but with less resources, I guess. For example, if the active player pick the plan action, they get to plan 2 cards, but the rest of the player only get to plan 1 card. So in some way, during every turn, like everyone will get to do something during the game. So that I think cover the basic of the action. I guess another thing was that when you activate one of the action, so they each have color associated with it. You have red, blue, and yellow. When you activate it, you also activate all the other cards on your tableau and on your player board that has the same color. So say if I activate Compose, I'll activate all the card with red power as well. So again, definitely remind me of Wingspan, where if you activate one habitat, you activate all the brown power in that habitat. And also all the power get activated when the other player choose that particular color action as well. So all in all, there's a lot of activation and action going on in Earth. Definitely way more than Wingspan, I would say, in between turns. Okay. And another unique thing about Earth is that your starting resources is determined by the Earth, the island card that you pick. I think depending on what mode you play, like with the standard mode, you have 2 options and then you pick one, and then it tells you how many cards you get to see at the beginning, how many you get to keep, and how many soil you start with. So this is a little bit different from Wingspan, where everyone kind of have to pick 5 things between cards and food. So yeah, so this is unique to Earth. Let's see, and then next let's look at the other board that we have here. So on this board here, you have the fauna card, or the animal cards, and I would say they are basically kind of like the end of round goal in Wingspan. So each of this card will have very specific objective that all the players are trying to compete with each other to accomplish. So in Earth, how it works is that the first player to complete the objective will get more points. So the first player will get 15, and then the second will get 11 points, so on and so forth. And that applies to all 4 of these objectives, or animal cards objectives. So very similar to 4 end of round goals in Wingspan. And then on here we also have ecosystem card. So I would say the ecosystem is similar to bonus card in Wingspan, but I guess in Earth you have 2 share bonus card for all the players. So again, you can see here you can score as many points as you can based on the condition that you satisfy here, so you can get multiple multiplier. So again, these 2 are shared between all the players, but when you start the game, you do get 1 personal bonus card. So in total, there are 3 bonus cards in play in the game that you can use to score additional points from. And I don't believe you can gain additional bonus card or ecosystem card in the game by any mechanics. And then there's also cards with black power. So for example, this card that gives you 6 soil and it has a black color. So that's a one-time benefit. So very similar to the when play power of Wingspan. So you play it, you gain one-time benefit. That's it. And what else? So if you look at some details of the cards here, so again, you have the cost of the card, and then you also gain victory points for each card that you play. So that's very similar to Wingspan. You get bird points. Let's look at some flora cards. So for flora card, again, this costs 2 soy, and then you give you 2 victory points, and then this show like how many sprout you can hold on this card. So similar to X spaces. So this is the space for the growth token. So I guess that's unique about Earth as well. You can only put limited growth token on each card. I was comparing it to caching. With caching, you can cache unlimited number. And then let's look at another card. So on top of the card, you will see this symbol that those are the habitat of each card. This is not in the same sense as the habitat requirement in Wingspan, because in Wingspan the habitat determine which column or which row you get to play the bird, but in here you can freely build your tableau. But depending on the objective and some bonus card, if you align cards with similar habitats, sometimes you get bonus points. So that come into play in that way. And then each card also have, or flora card also have a plant type. So this is bush type, I believe. And then let's see. And then this is herbs. So I would say this is similar to the nest type in Wingspan. So again, it will come into play with different objective and bonuses. You want to play specific nest type, or in this case, specific plant type to score more points. And there's even a wild type, like star nest in Wingspan, where it counts for all 4 different type of plant type. And then if you look at the names, there's also words that are being underlined and bold. So those are color or geography or names of animals. So those come into play when you score. There are certain bonus card that give you extra points. Just like Wingspan, you have bonus card that give you points if it has color or geography in it. So another very similar ideas there. And another card that you see a lot in Earth is the terrain card. So this brown colored card. So typically what it gives is, ongoing discount or some benefit throughout the game. And a lot of it also give you an end game scoring. So additional points based on how you place your card. I guess if I want to say, this is similar to the yellow game end power that was introduced to Wingspan Oceania. But I would not say that's 1-to-1, but that's some similarity there. And then another thing that's unique to Earth as well is this type of cards called event cards. Again, it's usually just one-time play cards. You get some benefits, some resources, or you get to carry out some conversion of resources. But it's one time only, and you can play it anytime during the game, even during your opponent turn. So that I don't see any similarity with Wingspan. So yeah, I would say as you can see here, that there are a lot of concepts and mechanic that in Earth they're very similar to Wingspan. You can't help but feel like, yeah, a lot of it is heavily borrowed from Wingspan. And I've heard, it also borrows some of the mechanics from games like Terraforming Mars, Ark Nova, and Roll for the Galaxy. I'm not really familiar with those games, so I'm not gonna comment on those. I would say, in regards to complexity, I would say Earth definitely is slightly more complex than Wingspan, in the sense that if you look at the end of round goals or the bonus and objective, that's just a lot more to keep track with. You always have 7 objectives, bonus card that you're trying to keep track, and in terms of building your tableau is not as linear. You can really start at any corner of your tableau and build it out, and your placement of your cards really matters on how efficient your engine is going to run. So yeah, in terms of that, I would say Earth is definitely has some added complexity to compared to Wingspan. But on that note, I would say with Wingspan Asia, the introduction of duet boards definitely does add another layer of complexity that maybe bring these two games closer together. But if you just compare the base game, I would say Earth is slightly more complex, has more complexity to it. Another thing I want to highlight about Earth that's similar to Wingspan is that a lot of people think of Wingspan as a solitaire game where you just focus on building your own board and your own action, and you can certainly play that way. But I found that in Earth, you can be a lot more efficient if you pay attention to your opponent's boards and their action as well, like being able to anticipate what your opponent's is going to take, what action they're going to take next, and knowing what habitat activation would benefit them the most or less. If you take those into consideration, you have a more successful game. So kind of similar to Wingspan in that regards. I would say point counting in Wingspan is definitely easier. You just know what your opponent, what power your opponent is going to activate, and it's pretty linear, so you can calculate the point pretty easily. It's a little bit more complicated in Earth because there's just so many powers, and the interconversion of the resources and point, it just a little bit more complex. So I've played around 20 games of Earth so far, and that's nowhere close to the number of Wingspan game that I've played. But I would say Wingspan is still my go-to if I have to pick one between the two. One thing I really like about Wingspan is the satisfaction of finding the right bird with the right power and finding the synergy between them. It's interesting in Earth, you have all these different cards with very unique powers, but sometimes I find that the best strategy for the game is really just to play the right card with the right habitat or nest type, so that you can beat your opponent in scoring the end of round goal and scoring bonus card. So yeah, it's just a lot of time I'm not even paying too much attention to the power of the card that I play, because I know that racing to complete the tableau and playing as many cards as possible on my tableau is more important. But again, I've only played this game for 20 games, so maybe there might be things that I'm missing as well. But based on my experience so far, I just feel like Wingspan game is tighter, if that makes sense. And another thing that I really like about Wingspan is the faster play time. So for two-player games, typically, I can knock it out in 30 to 40 minutes, and even under 30 minutes if I really try and my opponent is really familiar with the game. With Irv, so far with two-player game, I feel like even both player playing really fast, it usually takes 50 minutes to an hour. Mainly that just a lot more things to consider, and there's also a lot more activation in between turns. So that's just another thing. I just like the fast pace of Wingspan better. And then I guess another thing that I want to talk about that's also get discussed a lot in Wingspan is how much of the game is luck versus skill. I think in the general consensus is that's definitely a significant amount of luck with Wingspan, especially the access to card is pretty limited. What you draw and what you have in your starting hand can really swing the game quite a bit. I feel like that's definitely still quite a bit of luck component in Earth as well. So if you're lucky and find some cheap card that you can play easily in the early game, or cards that synergize with multiple objectives or bonus card that can really swing the game. But I would say cards, it's kind of more accessible in Earth. They're just like way more, ways you can gain cards. So I think that mitigate the luck component a little bit more. So based on my very limited experience with both game, I feel like Earth maybe has a smaller luck component, but really I don't think they are far off from each other. In any case, that's all I want to talk about. If you're interested in the game, maybe check it out. The physical game is out, and I've been playing this game on Board Game Arena. I would say the implementation is pretty good. Yeah, play it and let me know what do you think, and how do you find it compared to Wingspan. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.